Your new day starts with the Brian Mudd Show. The news you need to start your morning in the Palm Beaches and the Treasure Coast.
Now, I've talked about it so many times over the years. It is probably the single most impressive improvement in my 21 years in Florida, witnessing what's happened with education in our state. And it's been no mistake that as we have seen Florida lead the way on school choice, that outcomes have improved. You know, you go back to where we were prior to school choice. Florida was consistently near the bottom in the country for education outcomes. Then you take a look at what we've seen in recent years, and it has been the ultimate 180. Now, you have multiple sources like U.S. News and World Report that will show Florida for each of the past 3 years either being number one or number two in K through college education. And none of this is by chance. Even if you were a school choice advocate previously, there is new research out showing that it probably has been more effective than you ever would have imagined it being. Somebody who is at the crux of this, what I would call a bombshell new study, recently released by the American Federation for Children, really highlights just how remarkable Florida's school choice program has paid off. And of course, the advent of universal school choice over the past few years really has helped take this to the next level. Patrick Graff, senior fellow from the American Federation for Children, joining us now. Patrick, tell us about what you have found in your remarkable study.
No, thank you. Thanks for having me this morning.
You bet.
So I had a study come out last week, and there's an article up online with Education Next called School Choice versus School Spending. And it was basically responding to this question that we hear all the time that, you know, don't these programs take money away from the public schools? Doesn't this harm the public school kids left behind? And, you know that competition is a piece of the school choice puzzle here. It's not just the kids who use the program. It's also those in the public school system who benefit from the possibility of using the scholarship if the public school is not working for them at some point. And basically what I found using the best research in both areas, so looking at the school spending research that all of the school spending folks cite when they say we need to spend more money on public schools, and also using one of the best competitive effects studies published was done on the state of Florida on the tax credit scholarship program over the first 15 years. And I found that the school competition approach was over 11 times more cost effective than if you simply just spent money to achieve the same outcome. So for the same amount of learning for kids to achieve at the end of that 15 years. So really a remarkable cost effective investment for the public school kids. So this isn't even the ones who are the ones taking advantage of the scholarships, having these life-changing opportunities to attend a new school that works for them. This is for the kids who are in the public schools in these high competition areas, which is more than half the state. So it's really an amazing story for the state of Florida.
Yeah, it's stunning. I've never seen anything like it. And I've done a lot of research on school choice over time, producing a lot of exceedingly positive outcomes, none the least of which has been the graduation rate, the overall GPA, and then also what I was mentioning about just total net outcomes, with Florida ranking first or second in education outcomes over the recent few years after being bottom of the barrel once upon a time. You mentioned 11.2. That to me is, I'm a data guy. I'm an analyst by trade. And there aren't many numbers that I come across that are like, holy crap kind of material. This falls into that category. I mean, you hear numbers sometimes and it's easy for them to kind of go in one ear and out the other. But you're literally talking about for every single dollar spent by the state of Florida on education, with the implementation of school choice, you would have to spend $11.20 trying to do things the way you used to do them to net a similar outcome. Have you, in your research and experience, ever come across something that is as profound in terms of outcomes as this?
I'm glad you picked up on this because, that it's an order of magnitude more cost effective to stimulate this school choice competition And I actually think that this is a conservative estimate, which is the striking part for me doing this research. And part of that is I make very conservative assumptions in the study. I try to be very generous to the school spending approach. When they do these competitive effect studies, what they're doing is they're comparing these public school kids in low competition areas versus high competition. And they look at the difference between those two areas and say that's the effect of competition. But to the extent that school choice in Florida has raised all of the schools up, all of the public schools, everybody got better, that part of the competition isn't even captured by this 11.2 difference. So that's kind of what's remarkable to me. And there's several other conservative assumptions, but it really ends up being pretty significant. And in the current area of school choice, we have all kinds of options available in rural areas that weren't available 15 years ago in Florida. So things like these small micro school experiments or funding for families who want to do homeschool co-ops. Those are all things you can do in rural areas for school choice that previously you could not.
Speaking with Patrick Graff, senior fellow from the American Federation for Children. Website, by the way, is federationforchildren.org. The title of this report's new study, Scaling School Choice 11 Times More Cost Effective Than Additional Public School Spending. Patrick, I think some of the takeaways here are self-evident based upon your info. Practically, what is actionable coming off of this study?
I think the big thing is these states that have yet to adopt a private school choice program. I think they need to start being honest with what that additional dollar is buying them in their states. We are now at the point where, Florida is spending less than national average per kid per year, and yet is outperforming by a large margin places like New York and California, who are spending, in the case of New York, over $37,000 per student per year, and is in the middle of the pack in terms of states for their kids' outcomes. And to just show you from the state of Florida this 11x difference, in order to pay for that program over the first 15 years, it cost the state of Florida $3.8 billion. If you had taken the school spending approach, it would have been $32 billion, almost $32 billion. And to put that in context, that with that amount of money, you could buy the Dolphins, the Bucks, the Jags, the Heat, the Magic, the Rays, and the Marlins, and still have $2 billion left over. So that's a lot of money. The state of Florida doesn't need to be throwing that money necessarily, just dumping it into a system that isn't working. And instead, they chose a really cost-effective alternative and achieved the same results for their public school kids. So for me, it's really a win-win, right? It's families that get a win who get to use the scholarship, but also for taxpayers who care about improvement in their public schools.
Look at that! Even drilling down on the sports analysis there, I got a smile out of our our news anchor and sidekick Joel. He's taking a look at that. We are right now, taking a look at the Chinese influence of buying the Miami Dolphins. So that's what had been on his mind. Okay, so Patrick, within the takeaways for the other states, hear you loud and clear. So did you find anything for Florida that we might be able to do more of or do better at this point? Or basically, are we hitting on all cylinders in the advent of universal school choice?
Yeah, I think the key here for Florida is, we're at the beginning of a new age in private school choice. I don't know if you had heard yet about this new federal education freedom tax credit that was a part of the One Big Beautiful Bill.
Yes.
But Governor DeSantis recently opted in, as I'm sure that you have perhaps spoken about with your audience. So that's coming to Florida, and I think Florida has a chance to lead again on kind of the cutting edge of private school choice across the country. And I think one of the amazing things about this is not only can we supercharge scholarships for kids maybe with disabilities who need a little bit more funding in order to have an adequate education in their schools, you can also bring this to public schools. So scholarships are also available for kids in the public school sector for things like tutoring and for scholarships. And we have been very dismayed because we can clearly see that this new program is going to benefit all kids. But the teachers unions have really come out strong against it because they're not the ones in control of the money. The money is going to scholarship organizations. You get a tax credit off of your federal tax credit, your federal taxes for that donation. And then the scholarship orgs get it to parents directly. So cutting that link is something that teacher unions are fighting tooth and nail to keep this program out of blue states that have not opted into the program yet. I think at the end of the day, the amount of additional funding is just going to be overwhelming for them to opt in. But I think Florida has a real opportunity to show them what is possible when you embrace this approach.
Patrick, great work. Thank you so much for producing this and also taking the time to share the results with us.
Absolutely. Thanks for spreading the word. I appreciate it.
You bet. That is Patrick Graff, again, Senior Fellow for the American Federation for Children.